I'm Don, and welcome to the Crimson Bebop. So you want to collect anime figures? Well, I'm going to be the first to say my condolences for your wallet. But here's some advice to help ease that burden.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Okay, so you want to collect anime figures. Well, my first piece of advice, you have to address budget. Now, when starting any new hobby or any new activity, you should always concern yourself with your budget. How much are you willing to spend? How much can you afford to spend without breaking your bank? And let me be the first to say, like, if you go into this hobby of collecting figures from animes and everything, this can be expensive. So know your budget. Know how much you can spend, know how much you're willing to spend, and how much you have to stop when you need to stop spending. So know these things. This doesn't just go for anime figures, this goes for any hobby that you're doing, any activity that you're doing. Know when to cut it off, when you need to stop so it doesn't interfere with your day-to-day life. Okay, so going to the next topic, let's talk about where you should start. For instance, if you're concerned with your budget, that means you should figure out what type of figures you want to buy. Now, the caveat to this is, do you want to buy figures from a certain series or certain characters? Then that may kind of give you down a certain path of what kind of figures you're going to get. For instance, if you're going, like you want to collect Dragon Ball Z figures, you can make do with getting prize figures. I will explain what prize figures are, but that means you can do with buying figures that are around 30 to 40 bucks, which is very good. That's very simple and that's very affordable. However, if you want to go down the line of, let's say you want to collect figures from, let's say, Rent-A-Girlfriend or Food Wars, then you're a lot more limited on what kind of figures you can get from that line. So understand where you want to start your collection. Do you want to start with a very popular anime? Do you want to start with something that's a little bit more niche? Then that may kind of change what you're going to be getting. Okay, so we've addressed the budget, we've addressed what kind of collection you want to start. If you want to do a series, a certain anime, or you just kind of want to collect any kind of character that you actually have an affection for. But I guess the first thing we should really get to at this point now is, where do you get your figures? Now, you can go to your local manga shop. You most likely will find some figures there. You can go to conventions, which is a good place to find maybe some hard to find figures. However, with that being said, at a convention specifically, well, they may start kind of upcharging you for certain figures. And depending on the convention you're going to, they may not always be legitimate figures. So yes, there are bootleg figures out there. Kind of sucks, but that is the world this is. So with that being said, you should know where to look for legitimate figures and what they look like. My first recommendation is go to a site called My Figure Collection. This site tells you exactly the type of figures, what they look like, the starting price, when they came out, and sometimes even where to buy them. This is a great place to categorize all the figures in your collection, as well as look at figures that are coming out and figures that are out. This is a great place for this. So my first piece of advice, start on My Figure Collection, because that way you can get a catalog of pretty much every figure. I don't want to say every, okay, maybe not every figure there is, but a good healthy amount of the figures. So My Figure Collection, first and foremost. I'll explain what My Figure Collection is in another video for another time, but first off, start a page on My Figure Collection, start going down there. So once you have My Figure Collection, another place you can start looking. The biggest one, the one that pretty much everyone goes to, is AmiAmi. AmiAmi is the go-to place for anime figures. Not because they have every figure ever sold or anything like that, or they sell every figure, but because they have probably the biggest catalog of figures in their inventory. Don't get me wrong, they don't have some exclusive figures and stuff like that, but they are pretty much a go-to for figures. So after AmiAmi, you can go to Right Stuff, you can go to Crunchyroll store, Good Smile Good Smile store, Kotobukiya, and a few other places. I know there's one I'm forgetting, it's like literally on top of my head. Solaris Japan is a good one as well, and I think I said the Good Smile Company. So those are some good ones. I've put them somewhere on the screen here, but you can always go to these places as well and find good figures for the actual legitimate retail prices and everything, with the exception being Solaris Japan. They also sell figures that are pre-owned and are way expensive, but that's a good place if you're looking for a very hard to find figure. But again, go back to rule one: budget. If you cannot afford it without breaking your bank, don't get it. So caveat there. So you talk about where to buy the figures and everything like that. So going to these sites, you're going to start seeing a lot of things when you start looking up characters. So looking up anime or just specific figures in general, you start seeing a few things. You will start seeing the manufacturer. So these are going to be anybody from Good Smile, Kotobukiya, Alter, Mythos, things like that. And depending on what you want, some of those companies have the figures you want or the characters that you want, and some of them don't. It just depends on the company. Now, which companies are good may just depend on what figures you just like. For instance, I love Alter. Alter makes beautiful figures. Their details are amazing. However, they can get expensive. Mythos is a very good figure line. They made some great figures. You've probably seen something like the Miku figures and stuff like that. And then you have figures like Good Smile Company, which is always a go-to. You have Kotobukiya, which Kotobukiya may very well be the most not the expensive, the most budget-friendly and for a good quality for figures. So again, a lot of choices on there and everything. So go to one of those sites, you can find out what kind of manufacturer you're dealing with. Okay, so starting this collection, you made My Figure Collection, you talked about your budget, you've looked at some of those other websites like My Figure Collection, you've looked at AmiAmi, Right Stuff, Crunchyroll Store, all those good things, but you're seeing different sizes for figures or different heights and things like that. So where should you start? Well, let's start with the most inexpensive type of figure, and that is a Funko Pop. Alright, so Funko Pops, while not exactly the most popular of anime figures, they are pretty popular for the most part. Because a lot of people collect Funko Pops. For one, they're inexpensive. They start around $10 to $12, and for the most part, Funko makes a character or a pop for pretty much every character, which is very strange because some characters that don't usually have figures, they at least may have a Funko Pop. For instance, let's take this Hiei Funko Pop from Yu Yu Hakusho. He only has one other figure that I know of, and it's not a great quality one, but he has a Funko Pop, which is pretty decent considering the fact that I have him, and he's a very great character from a very classic anime of mine. But Funko Pop is very good because, again, they make a lot of characters in their style. Depending on who you ask, some people don't like Funko Pops, some people love them, some people just collect Funko Pops just by themselves. So, and this is also a very, inexpensive collection to start. For the most part, Funko Pops start around $10, $12 per pop. Some of them do start going into $12, $15, $20, depending on the size or how extravagant they are. For instance, there are ones that have larger bases or some that are just a lot bigger. So they can get a little bit up there, like $30, $40 if you get the Mega Funko Pop. And the other thing, and this is not just for Funko Pop, this is for any anime figure. If it's a very rare one, for instance, my Spike Spiegel Funko Pop, they can start at $10, $12 when they first come out, but if they're rare, their prices shoot up to ridiculous amounts. For instance, I've seen my Spike Funko Pop go for sale for upwards to about $800, and that's a pop. This is the same for almost every type of anime figure too. So their prices start to get very high. Like their aftermarket prices after they initially come out, and there are no more like pretty much being produced at the moment, their prices skyrocket. This is true for not just pops, pretty much for any figure and almost pretty much any collection. That's kind of how collecting works. But if you want to start an inexpensive collection at a starting base, I would say go with Funko Pop, because again, they start around $10, $12 when the pop first comes out. Another line you go with, and this one's becoming more popular, and their figures are kind of getting better and better with time, is Pop-Up Parade. Now, Pop-Up Parade is, I want to say, owned by Good Smile Company, and they make very broad characters. Like they make characters from pretty much any kind of popular anime, and some a little bit less known animes, which is good. Pop-Up Parade is a very good, avenue to go down to if you want certain characters as well. A lot like Funko Pop. But this may be because even though the characters aren't, very popular, but they can have their own, fan base and everything. And it's very inexpensive to make to make Pop-Up Parade figures. For instance, even though this character is popular and there's a lot of figures of her, here is Miku from Quintessential Quintuplets as a Pop-Up Parade. Again, not very expensive. I got her for about $20 when she came out. And she's fairly decent. However, given the fact that she is $20, that's pretty much what you're gonna get with some of these figures, is the fact that her sculpt is kind of, it's decent, it's kind of average, it's all right. You're not gonna see very much shading. The sculpt isn't gonna go out of its way to do a lot, and there are some things that aren't just gonna be as clean. Don't get me wrong, Pop-Up Parade for the most part is actually pretty good and decent, but there are sometimes there's going to be a few hit or misses because again, you don't get very vibrant shading, or the colors don't pop out as much. There are going to be some minor things that are going to be imperfections. For instance, like some air bubbles or some scuffs, just things that happen in production, because again, these are inexpensive, widely produced figures. Now, this figure line and a few other ones I'm about to show you are also called prize figures. And they're called prize figures because you can win them pretty much in arcade games or crane games, and there are prizes from those.
Who's in charge here?
Thus the term prize figures. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have some very good prize figures. For instance, Miku's very good. And there's a few other ones that we'll talk about that I think are phenomenal. But prize figures are inexpensive. And again, when you start getting into that low budget range of like $20 or so, you kind of get what you pay for the most part. There are some, exclusions to that line. So with that, again, Funko Pop, or not Funko Pop, and Pop-Up Parade, you get clear bases, kind of unexpired, they don't have anything on them. The sculpts are, decent, not anything to write home about. Face sculpt is pretty alright. So depending on the prize figures you get, they could be hit or miss, which again, you'll see down the line. So, and again, this one probably is like, I want to say maybe 6 inches tall, so not very big. It sits on your shelf, 6 inches? Maybe 5 inches. Yeah, so not a great height, but again, if you can't find certain characters and certain bigger sculpts, you may want to get Pop-Up Parade. Now, I mentioned you pretty much get what you pay for with some prize figures, but there are others that their sculpt is way better than what you pay for. For instance, I have this Dragon Ball Z character, Bulma, which is a prize figure, and already you can tell she's a lot bigger than the Miku I had. She actually is more towards the line of a scale figure. However, she's not a scale figure because, one, there is no determined scale of her, so you actually don't know exactly what her actual scale is. Two, her price is around, I want to say I got her for around 30 bucks. Very inexpensive. And she literally is just not in that line of scale figures, which is good because for a $30 figure, her sculpt is amazing. There's not a lot of shading, but at the same time, there's some great details. For instance, with her jacket, her pants, her socks and shoes, they have very good details. And again, this is for a $30 figure. And this is by, I want to say, Van Presto. Is it Van Presto? I'm not 100% sure. I am like 80% sure it's Van Presto. But overall, this is a great figure. It has a great sculpt and a great coloring, as well as specifically for this Bulma figure, she actually came in 2 different variations. She had this variation, which is her Dragon Ball coloring, and then she had a variation where she had a red jacket and blue hair, which I think is more of her Dragon Ball Z coloring. So that's also very amazing because that tells you that even prize figures have very good, you know, alterations or alternatives to just even one figure. And again, for her price, this is a phenomenal figure of Bulma because I love the face, I love the hair, how it's flowing, I love the body sculpt, and I just love her pose. Even though there's this, you know, random peg here, again, that's a support peg, which some figures do have that, which is fine. I don't find that to be a turn off with some figures, so that's again more up to you if you like those support things or not. Make that in your, you know, deliberation if you get a figure or not. Overall, for me, this is a great figure, and it was inexpensive, and I love it. So, again, Bulma for 30 bucks, very good figure. And also, there's not a lot of figures of Bulma, funny enough. All right. Okay, bang for your buck, right? We talked about prize figures. Now, there are 2 more kind of, one's a prize figure, one is technically in the mid ground between prize figure and scale figure. So I said like a lot of companies may not make characters, or if you do find them, you may see 2 characters with very different sculpts, prices, and things. And here's a character very much like that as an example. Here's Senku from Dr. Stone. And this was like one of the first figures they have of him. Now I pre-ordered him because again, I didn't know how many, if they were even going to make scale figures of him or good figures of him. So I pre-ordered him because I love Dr. Stone. And even though he was very inexpensive, he was only about, I want to say $20 or so. I literally got what I paid for because this is not a great sculpt of him. Now the pose, you think it looks, all right, it looks fine. Because when you look back, like, okay, yeah, you could tell it's Senku because he has the iconic hair, he has the, you know, bottle and everything else. He has the lab coat with E equals MC square. For the most part, it looks like Senku. But the face does not. This is a horrible face sculpt of Senku, and by far one of my most disappointing of figures, even though it's a prize figure for 20 bucks. I literally got what I paid for this. And that's because I didn't think there was going to be a better figure of him, and I just, you know, sprung out and got him without really looking into it. And that's my piece of advice for you guys, is that do your research, look at the figure, and honestly, if it's something like $20 or so, I'm pretty sure like they're gonna have, you know, more of them. So again, just take your time and look into the figure, look at some reviews and everything, make your own determination to figure out if you want the figure or not. Because again, I just bought him, even though it was like only 20 bucks. Again, that's 20 bucks I could have saved and got, you know, towards a better figure. Because this is a bad Senku. Honestly, his face sculpt is horrible, and also because he's a prize figure, he falls down a lot because he does not have a very good support. He's just on this little one leg thing, and honestly, he falls down too much. Honestly, he annoys me. So that's one version of a prize figure. Now I said I also had a figure that was between a prize figure and a scale figure. And that is another version of Senku, and this is my perfect Senku figure for the most part. This is like the best Senku figure that's out there, even though there are literally like maybe 3. But this is the best one because this figure screams Dr. Stone, and it screams Senku because it's a perfect variation of him. From one, a much better, much more, you know, iconic and much more detailed face sculpt. Like this looks a lot more like the character. Like if I see this up close, that's Senku, not just from far away or step back. No, that's Senku, you know, through and through. Even not just from, you know, the face sculpt or you know, the outfit, but also the details around him. He has the flag of science, like from the anime, so he has his flag, which has the symbol and everything. He has this very smoky background, you know, from the chemical in the anime, and he has also the vials of, you know, that he also uses. So everything about this screams not just Senku, but Dr. Stone. And that's what you want to figure. You want the figure to tell people this is what this anime is from. This is that character, and this is what you should be looking for. This is what pretty much every figure should aspire to kind of be. And I'm giving this a lot of praise, I really am, because I legitimately do love this figure, because I didn't think there were going to be any good figures of Senku after I got that very poor, you know, prize figure. But this Senku is amazing. I really do love this figure. And he's technically not a scale figure. He's technically not a prize figure. He falls somewhere in a very sweet spot. And he cost me about $80. And that's, in my opinion, very inexpensive. For 80 bucks, I get a beautiful sculpt, beautiful shading, coloring, and everything for a figure. And also, like, has a better base than some scale figures that cost like $200. So his base is also amazing. So this character in this figure is stupendous. Like, it's an amazing figure for only $80, and I love it because it's a character I legitimately do love from a series I already care about. So this goes to show you, you spend a little more, you may get, you know, a lot more bang for your buck. But at the same time, there are some prize figures that are worth the price as well. Being like that Bulma that only cost me about 30, 40 bucks or so. But for about double the price of that other Senku, I got this one. And that's just a way better trade-off because I won't regret getting this figure.
This is exhilarating. Get excited.
With that, again, we talked about budget, talking about what you want to do, what kind of figures you should get. We talked about Funko Pops, we talked about some prize figures. And we talked about that midline figure that's between prize and scales. However, there is one type of figure I did neglect to mention, and that's NENDROIDs. So I don't have any NENDROIDs here personally because I don't own any NENDROIDs. I do have one pre-owned, not pre-owned, pre-order, which is my Komi NENDROID. But NENDROIDs are a very good mid-ground between, I want to say, prize figures and Funko Pop, because they're much more maneuverable. You can put them in a lot more iconic poses, and they have different, you know, face paints that come off that you could change out. So NENDROIDs are very good, and a lot of people love NENDROIDs because of that, because they also have characters that don't get like scale figures or like the more expensive figures. So NENDROIDs are very good with that. I can't speak to them personally because the reason I don't collect NENDROIDs is because I don't like the moving joints. That's something I just don't particularly like personally. That's why I don't collect a certain type of collectible, which is another type of figure which I legitimately just thought about until I mentioned NENDROIDs, and that's FIGMAs. And FIGMAs and NENDROIDs are pretty much the same. FIGMAs are pretty much, think of them as movable Funko Pops, but with better, you know, face details. And FIGMAs are pretty much just action figures. They have movable joints and everything that you can do. They have, what is it? They have accessories that can go in and out their hands. That's pretty much what NENDROIDs and FIGMAs are. They have movable joints, they have different face plates, and they have accessories that go with them. Just that NENDROIDs are a lot smaller, like about the size of Funko Pops, but have better expression. And FIGMAs are like, you know, these are the figures that you're gonna talk about, but they just have movable joints. I don't collect either one of those because I don't like the movable joints. It just bugs me. But again, NENDROIDs are pretty much more acceptable to me because they're a lot cuter. So, and again, NENDROIds, if I didn't mention before, NENDROIds prices start around $30 or so pretty inexpensive. FIGMAs, their prices, I don't ever look at them, so I'm not 100% sure, but their prices actually start around, I want to say maybe $80 or $100. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments for anybody who actually does collect Figmas. But they kind of start getting into that $100 price range for sure. I know that. So if that's something you're into, if you want something like more like an action figure you can pose and take pictures and photos of, Figmas might be very good for you. But at the same time, so are NENDROIDs. Again, this is your collection. You decide what you like and what you want to get into. Okay, so here is pretty much, I guess, what you may be here for, and that's scale figures. So first off, what is scale figures? You've heard me say scales a few times in this video, so let's break down what a scale figure is. A scale figure is basically the character's size, the character's actual canon height. If you go onto their wiki page, if you look in any kind of bio or creator book, and they tell you the character's height, and you scale that character down to like 1/7 of their height, 1/8 of their height, 1/6 of their height, 1/4, and etc. and so forth and so on. That's what a scale figure is. It's literally the scaled down version of that character's actual height. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That's what a scale figure is. Now, with scale figures, their prices do start going up when you start getting into these type of things. And the quality between each of them differentiate, not because of so much the scale itself, but more so because of the manufacturer. And this is why I wanted to bring up manufacturers before, because if you know a manufacturer that you like, you may want to go with them because you know the quality of the figure you're going to get. So for instance, Alter is one of my favorite companies, and I know what I get with them because their sculpts, their quality is amazing. So I am okay, shoving out $100, $200 for an Alter figure of a character I like because I know the quality is going to be there, as opposed to something like a company I have no idea, I've never heard of. So again, do your research, look into the different characters, who makes the character. Does Mega House have a good one? Does Alter have a good one? Does Kotobuki have a good one? Compare those figures, see which one you think looks more like the character to you, and which one is more inside your budget that you're okay with. So again, when it comes to scale figures, the quality mostly depends on the manufacturer, not so much the scale. Don't get me wrong, the scale may come into play with some of that, but it's mostly the manufacturer from here on out. So what scale figures, we thought about how you get the height of them, or how you get the name 1/6, 1/8, 1/7. I have about 3 scale figures here that you to look at. But I guess we should go over like what scales do figures come in, and they can come in from anywhere that manufacturer may want, but the most iconic ones go from 1/8, 1/7, 1/6. Very few 1/5 scales that I've ever seen. 1/4, 1/2, and then 1-to-1 scales. Now, to preface this, I am never going to show a 1-to-1 scale. Not the one that, at least none that I will ever buy. If I ever show a 1-to-1 scale, it has to be on a art room floor or something like that. But you will probably never see a 1-to-1 scale that I have personally bought. So I will go over like the 3 scale figures I've told you about, kind of go over their details, how much they run for, and about that, and kind of like some of the small differences for them. So the first one we should talk about is probably one of the 2 most common scale figures is a 1/8. So here I have Ochako, or from My Hero Academia, and she is a 1/8 scale. So she's very good. Her sculpt is amazing. I got her for about, that figure line runs for about 140 to about 150 depending on the character. And reason I got her is because I do like My Hero Academia. The girls in there are phenomenal, and like they are just very adorable and sweet and all that. For instance, Ochako here is one of them. But reason I got her over some of the other companies that made an Ochako figure is, again, going back to the manufacturer, and because the manufacturer who made this Ochako made the other My Hero girls, which you can probably see right behind me right there. But yeah, they made the other girls, and that's why I went with this Ochako, because again, I like having figures in one line. For instance, I like having some characters of the same series all from the same manufacturer because they blend so well together. Specifically this one, because each of the girls have a thing for their quirks. That, for instance, Ochako's here says float, and that's very nice. And I just love the figure because it has a very nice sculpt. The shading is very good for a character, and it's just overall nice. And each of the characters also come with a different faceplate. One with their like regular face, and then one with their kind of hero face. Which like for Ochako, she has a mask. For Momo, she would have a oh my god, I can't remember. She had a different faceplate. But most of the characters have different faceplates and everything. So I went with this line because I think it's just a better line, not just for Ochako here, but because they made the other girls. And that's something that you may want to consider if you want to collect a certain series. Do you want them all to be, from the same company or manufacturer? Or are you okay with, switching them out and just going with the character or figure that you think is probably better for the character? Me, I'm happy about this because that's just how I ended up, getting these characters, and I like the line. And I'll be honest, for most of my figures, I kind of do that. For instance, I have a Code Geass one that I think all those figures are made by Mega House, and they all are pretty much great figures, and I just went and got all of them. I have a C2 figure in there that you can probably see, which I don't think I've done the unboxing on my channel yet, but you should see her. You should see that unboxing probably later on, in like a week or so. And pretty much it's the same for a lot of my figures that I have complete collections of. For instance, I have a Bakemonogatari line. All the figures, same company, because they have great sculpts, and I trust that manufacturer. So that's what I mean when I went down to the booth of saying, down the line of saying, look into the manufacturer, look at who makes the figure, and then compare, because you may find that you like one manufacturer more than another. Just kind of like the process of going to this figure collecting hobby. Going back to the scale figures. Next, I have a 1/7 scale of probably one of the most famous characters. I'm not so gonna say in anime, but just in general, who has an abundance of figures, and that is Saber Alter from Fate Grand Order. So this is her alternate form. If you don't know, I'll get into Fate probably in another video, because if you see my channel, I also do Fate Grand Order, summon rolls. But this is a 1/7 scale of Saber Alter, aka Salter. And even though the sculpt for Ochako is amazing, this one is pretty much just as good, because again, her sculpt is great, her face is amazing, her hair has very good detail, even down to like the coloring from differentiating between her bow here and her hair. That's very good coloring, because believe it or not, at one point you saw some color bleeding with most figures, from something going from like this black to this like pale blonde. You will see like the paint kind of bleed into the next one. With her figure, you don't see that. So like her figure is very cleanly painted. Even another thing, like again, this is a very nice base, even though it's like just pretty much a kind of broken cement kind of base, is very nice for a character, because believe it or not, some higher end figures come with very plain bases. One very iconic company you'll see in a moment here, but also because her details are very good. For instance, her jacket and shirt are more of a matte black, but her boots are glossy black. So that's very good details for a character that's in some streetwear. And it's just very nice. Even to the point to where her necklace here actually moves and dangles, kind of like a real necklace does. And I think that's a very good detail, because it gives it a little bit more life, a little bit more dynamic action, because you would think that they would just make the necklace stay very still. But this is a very good figure from them. And this is from a very iconic character, and that's the kind of thing you want from manufacturers. And again, depending on the scale, some of the quality is going to differentiate, mostly because of the manufacturer, not so much the scale. Not that the scale doesn't play a part, because for instance, if you have a 1/4 scale compared to like a 1/7 scale, you may actually see that the 1/7 scale has better details in it as opposed to the 1/4 scale. And you would think that's strange, because the 1/4 scale is bigger, so you would think they will put more details in it, but sometimes that's really not the case. You're paying more for the fact that it's a bigger size and not so much more detail. Again, manufacturers are the ones that make that difference, not so much the scale. Just kind of like how things are. Now, the 1/4 scale I'm about to show you is one of the better ends of that, that idea. And this is from a very controversial company in some ways, not so much because they're bad, but because they can always, you can see that they can do more with the figures and for what they cost. I just realized I didn't tell you the price of that Saber Ultra figure. She ran for about like want to say like 120. So a good price for a 1/7 scale. Sorry about that. I know that was I had to throw that in before I forgot. But with Freeing, their figures, they start running somewhere between $200, $300. And that's because what Freeing mostly makes are 1/4 scale. And you very well should have seen some of these figures if you went to any person who collected figures, or you've been online or seen a YouTube figure collector. They most likely have one of these. And that's Freeing, very iconic bunny girl figure line. So yes, the Freeing bunny is always controversial in some way or another, because most people will say Freeing charges to sometimes $300 or in some cases $400 or 66,000 yen for a bunny. And I may or may not have pre-ordered that 66,000 yen bunny. The hobby gets expensive, people. Trust me, it gets expensive. But with Freeing, their sculpts are, for the most part, their sculpts are really good. Like they are always pretty much on point with their sculpts. The problem sometimes for them comes in with the details. And for instance, like their hair sculpts could be a little better. The sculpt they put, the overall sculpt or details they put into the actual figure could be better. Like they could make better lines or anything like that. And even to the point where they say they could do better or more with like the actual bunny suit and differentiate like how they actually do it could be better. And depending on the bunny figure, it's not, I'm not gonna say a hit or miss. It's just more like you kind of expect more from a company making 1/4 scale bunnies for the price that they sell them at. Now with that being said, the ones that hit so well. For instance, this is Rendu from Shokugeki no Soma or Food Wars. And this is a beautiful figure. Like this is like, I could not tell you, like this was like the first bunny figure I got. And it spoiled me for bunny figures because this is a gorgeous bunny to have. Like her size is huge, right? Like it's a 1/4 scale, that's a big size. But also her sculpt, like not just like for like the pose that she's in, but the sculpt for her hair and everything is amazing. Like this is a beautiful sculpt. It's just gorgeous for this character. And not to mention the fact her face is gorgeous. Like this is like legitimately, you cannot say this is a different character. Like you look at this character, you know this is Rendu from Food Wars. And not to mention like her pose, just it screams, sex appeal for this pose. And this again displays the character themselves. So like you think of Rendu and you see her, this is kind of what you get with her, and this is just phenomenal. So that's one good thing about Freeing, if you don't know, is like they make bunny figures, and yeah, their prices can be a little crazy. Their details may be, controversial depending on who you ask, but they make, bunny figures of almost any popular female character. They're kind of doing some male figures now here and there, so they're getting into that a little bit. But for female characters, they have a lot of them. Like they have, if you could think of a popular character, they're most likely making a bunny of her. For instance, like for Food Wars, there are no scale figures for Food War characters. Like there's, like I want to say 2 for Rina, 2 for Mito, and that's really it. There's no real scale figures of Food Wars, which I love Food Wars. It's one of my favorite animes. It really is. But if you ask me, oh, where can I get a Rendu figure? This is the only one. This is the only Rendu figure of Food Wars. And I'm so happy because I love Food Wars and I want figures of them. And considering what Food Wars is, I think the bunny figures kind of fit the motif kind of perfectly. But again, Rindu is probably one of the better FIGMA bunnies because of her face, her sculpt, her pose, and the color of her actual suit, because it's a very glossy purple. Most of their figures are either kind of like a white or a black, most times black. But the one thing about FIGMA I think I always do better is this. Yeah, it's a very plain base, like nothing there. Nothing there. A lot of people don't like the plain bases. I don't particularly mind, but when it comes to bases like this size, like this is a very large base for a very large figure, right? Because of the pose. Yeah, I kind of wish they did something with the base that's not just plain white, because it kind of doesn't particularly take away from the figure. But I mean, you have a figure like this, like, kind of wish there's something more with that base there, you know? Because I mean, like, this is a beautiful figure, but then base, very large, white, plain. Could do something better with that. But overall, like, this is a 1/4 scale, and this is my first 1/4 scale. This is my first bunny figure, and I love it. Like, that's what I mean. Pay for something that you actually legitimately will love, that you won't regret. And I don't regret this bunny figure, because I also have the Irina and Hisako bunny figures, which I don't think you can see them in the back. Let me see if I could scoot over. Yeah, they're right there. I have the other two, and it's June now, as the time of this video, and one of my other favorite characters from Food Wars is on her way in a bunny figure, and that is, if you've seen her, you will know, but I'll wait for the unboxing for that one, because I'm excited for that figure. That one's gonna be good. Okay, because she's actually on her way now. But I digress. I'm getting off point. Scale figures. Scale figures, depending on your price, depending on what you want, that's what you go for. Again, look into the manufacturer, look into the scale, look into how much they are, and find the ones within your budget. That's what you should be doing. So we talked about prize figures, we talked about Funko Pops, NENDROIDs, FIGMAs, and everything like that. So there's one other thing we can talk about that's not a scale figure, but they are out there, and they can run you from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. Now, statues are kind of this weird place, because some of them are licensed, meaning they are licensed by the actual company or the actual studio that made the anime or made the manga. And that means the company that makes the statue has permission to make the character or use a very, designed face sculpt to make the statue more like the character. And then there are non-licensed statues who are just take the idea of the figure or the idea of the character and make them into a statue. Depending on that, it's depending on these are kind of hit or miss. More so hit or miss with the non-licensed ones as opposed to licensed ones. The statues can be amazing, because some statues, for instance, like the Dragon Ball character I showed you, Bomba in Dragon Ball as a series, usually has, not pop-up rate, prize figures. But the other thing they have a lot more of is statues. Like Dragon Ball has a lot of statues, and it's just insane on the details of these things. So if you want certain characters for certain, series, statues may be where you want to go if you want something that's more, eye-catching, as opposed to like some of the scale figures. So I'm gonna show you a statue that's my grail figure. It is my grail of grails because it's my character, and you've seen him this entirety of this video, and that is Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. Obviously, if you don't know what the channel name is, who would you think it was gonna be? Man's been right here the entire time. So he is my first statue, and he is one of the ones that I want the most. He cost me about $350. Again, that's very cheap compared to some other statues I've seen go for $1,000 or so. And he's a little bigger than a 1/4 scale. So he's a very good size, and he has some heft to him. Like, I can't particularly just pick him up and like move him around like I did with like the 1/4, Rindu figure. No, he has heft on because with statues, their bases are a lot heavier. I will slightly pick them up to show you, but again, they're more fragile. Like even though the base isn't very insane, it also has like just some detail of the character in there. Yeah, see, I'm much more careful with the statue because they're much more fragile. And that's another thing with figures is that most scale figures are made out of PVC, as opposed to some statues that may be made out of resin, which is a higher quality and a lot more fragile of a material. So that's another reason why some statues may cost you more. If you want some details on this statue, it is from First for Figures, and this is the exclusive edition as opposed to the standard edition where he just has, you know, the bang, which it comes with the other arm for him, but I wanted this one. And if you can't tell, in the background I also have a Jet statue and a Faye one from that same company. So I went with that because I wanted the statues from a series that I truly do love, and Cowboy Bebop does not have any scale figures really. There's maybe 2 that I know of. There's one with Spike and Faye, and then there's just one of Spike. But that's really it. There's no other real figures of them. But statue-wise, First for Figures made a statue line of my favorite anime and the characters within it. So I kind of went on my way. I was like, yes, I want these characters, I want these statues, and I went out and got them. And that was within my budget, and that's something I want my collection to be. For instance, if I ever decide to say, okay, I'm going to stop collecting, I will sell all of these figures. The ones I will keep are these because they are just spectacular and they are just more iconic to me. And these are statues I won't ever pretty much give away because they mean something to me. And that's within my collection. That's what you should always go for. And let me preface this. I don't ever particularly intend or see myself selling any of my figures because how my collection works, if I like a character or if it's a series that I truly do like, for instance, I don't buy a figure of every anime I've seen. I find characters or animes that truly resonate with me, for instance, Food Wars, because I'm not a great cook, but my dad is a cook and I, cooked with him when I was younger, and Food Wars and anime, or food and anime, just go hand in hand with me. So I love Food Wars. I love FIGMA because of how much I play the games and how much I like the series, the characters, and all those things from lore. And that's what I mean. I have series that resonate with me, so I collect those figures. And that's how I determine, which figures I'm going to buy. So that's why I probably have a very big thing of like, I probably won't sell this collection because of that. Even to the fact that I have like a bad prize figure, like the Senku one, I still love Dr. Stone and Senku, so I don't sell that prize figure. But that's what I mean, and this goes to our next point. Buy what you love. This is your collection. Do with it what you will. Collect what you want. To hell with what anybody else says. This is your collection. You're going to see it every day. They don't have to see it. So, and this is what anime and what this whole thing is about, right? You want something to give life or like, symbolize your love for this, this art. And that's what collecting figures is. At least that's what I think it is. If you have a different perspective of it, hey, share it with me. But overall, that's why I collect figures. I like having characters of series that have really touched me and series that I truly just do love. So that's why I collect the figures. That's why I got into the hobby, because I think they're some of the most beautiful things because they are just amazing pieces of art, in my opinion. Not just anime as an art, but just the figures themselves. And it's just that moment I can collect that moment in time from when I first saw that series and fell in love with it. So again, this is your collection. Figure out what's in your budget. What do you want to collect? What series is there? What manufacturer do you want to go to? And just decide what you want to make this hobby into. And again, I will be unboxing a lot of figures here. I'll be showcasing a lot of figures that I have and everything. And I do want to hear your feedback on like, what do you want to see out this channel? Like, do you want to see me do, more figure reviews? Do you want to see me do manga reviews, anime reviews, stuff like that? Because I want this to also be an avenue for you guys to kind of, talk about figures and everything like that. So come here and discuss that. So thank you very much for watching. One more thing. At the time that you're seeing this video, I am most likely at Anime Expo in LA. So it's my first time going there and I'm really excited. So I may be coming back with a lot more merchandise. We will see. And yes, I'm taking my own advice. I am not going to be looking at too many figures unless it's a very rare one that I particularly want, that fits in my budget, and I look to see I am not being overcharged for the figure. So there's that. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, all those good things that every YouTuber asks you to do. And I will see you in the next video. Later.